Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Bogey Men Golf Podcast in our series of preview podcasts for the 2024 KPMG Women's Irish Open at Carton House on the O'Mara Golf Course. This coverage is brought to you in partnership with Sports Direct, who are proud premium partners of the 2024 KPMG Women's Irish Open. On the podcast this week, I'm joined by LET winner Amy Taylor from England. She spoke about the fine margins between losing your tour card and winning on the Ladies European Tour and what it has meant for her. She is now going to be teeing it up in the 2024 AIG Women's British Open, which is going to be played at St Andrews. She also spoke to me about why last year's KPMG Women's Irish Open was one of her favourite events of the year and exactly why she's excited to come back and play in Ireland again. Amy Taylor, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk to you today and see what it's all about.
So you were saying just before we hit record that you're on a bit of a down week now. You're back home. You've got a week off. What do you like to do on a week off?
Typically I take a lot of rest time. I think we have quite packed schedule weeks. They tend to be 2 or 3 tournaments in a row. So when I have my weeks off at home, I do take quite a lot of time off. Focus more on the physical side. When I'm on the road, I'm not very good at working out and keeping that side of it. So when I come home, it's like I start all again and build my strength up to a point where I'm happy with it. And then chucking a bit of golf practice here and there.
Do you pick up the clubs on an off week, or do you like to keep them in the corner?
I try and keep them in the corner for as long as I can, but I'm always itching to get back at it. I yeah, I had a golf day on Monday, so I was doing a beat the pro there. And then I took yesterday off, today off, and I'll probably leave it until Friday before I go again.
Where are you off to then after this week?
So I leave on Monday for the Dutch Open. It's at Hilversum Golf Club. It's really a nice course. We played it last year, so it was pretty bouncy last year. So I don't know. Hopefully, it'll be a little softer this year. But yeah, it's a really nice golf course. So I'm looking forward to that.
So anyone that follows the Ladies European Tour closely will know that this is your second year on tour, and you very recently won the Italian Open, your maiden win on tour. You must be pretty chuffed with that. It was a great tournament. You opened it up with a 67 in the first or second round.
Yeah, second round. Yeah. So it was really great. I was happy to kind of get it over the line. I was leading over the night going into the final round. So I always think that's a difficult position to be in. You kind of know everyone's coming for you, emotions that come with that. But it was great to get the win.
What's that final round like when you're going into it there? You've got the lead. You've got everyone else in the field kind of going at you. We spoke beforehand about Lauren Walsh at the moment playing some really good final rounds. How is it like the morning of where you're waiting for everyone to go off ahead of you, knowing that someone could shoot a 64, 63 and steal it from you?
Yeah, I think it's definitely nerve-wracking. Like anyone who says they're not nervous is just lying. I was definitely nervous kind of the range in the morning. There was just more people around me, more cameras than I'm used to. But yeah, as soon as I was on the golf course, I relaxed a little bit, and I was kind of leaning on the experience from college golf. I had an event where I shot 6 under in the last round, and a girl shot 7 and beat me by 1. So in that instance, I played well enough to win, and I didn't. And so that kind of took that element out of it. I knew that someone can play well enough. So winning wasn't as much the forefront of my mind as maybe it would be on another player. It was more just going out there and trying to put a good round of golf together.
How do you reconcile that when you go out shoot 6 under, someone shoots 7, and you go, well, I mean, I played good enough golf to win. I just obviously didn't.
Yeah, it's tough. Because you got to give yourself a pat on the back at the end of the day. You played good golf, but when you play good enough to win and you don't, it's always tough. And I definitely learned a lot from that. And when I did win for the first time on the Access Series, that was my first win as a pro. I also felt like I didn't play my best golf. And I thought when I won, it was going to be like perfect golf. So I think kind of the experience where I almost played perfect golf and I didn't win, and then I won without playing perfect golf, I think they kind of definitely were learning experiences for me and taught me a lot about what it takes to win and how you can win in different ways.
You made reference there to your college experience. You play golf over in Texas Tech?
Yep, yep, Texas Tech.
And I'm correct in saying you went over there like quite young in the first place?
Yeah, so I actually got the offer a day before my 17th birthday. Um, I was looking to go out there having finished kind of my education over here when I was 18. But the circumstances at Texas Tech were they were kind of a player short through injury. And so, yeah, they wanted me to start in like 2 months. So it was a really quick turnaround. I didn't really have a lot of time to think it over. I just got all the application, all the paperwork done, sat all the exams I needed to sit, and it was like just go, go, go. And when I got out there, it was definitely tough going out young. At the time, I had a girl on my team who was 23, and I just turned 17. So there was quite like a big age gap, not much in common with where she was in her life compared to where I was very different. But it caused me to like grow up a lot and mature quicker than I probably would have had I not gone out there, which I think was a good thing, especially for my golf. And it took me a couple of years to find my feet, I'd say, but yeah, it was a really good opportunity, and yeah, I don't regret going at all.
I can imagine not. So did the Texas Tech come to you and say, we want you to finish school early there in the UK, like sit your final exams and then come on over? Because that doesn't sound like the usual route. Like that's very uncommon.
Yeah, it was purely because one of their players got injured, so they were a player short, and the girls who they'd recruited to kind of join in August were already set for August, so they needed someone who was kind of flexible with their schedule. And the English education system does allow that in the sense that you have your GCSEs and then your A levels, and for the American system, they don't require your A levels; they just require the SAT, which is an exam you have to sit that kind of puts you into the American education system. So they gave me kind of a score I had to achieve on the SAT, and they got it as low as possible for me. So they basically were just like, we need someone who can just pass it and like come and play. And the main thing for me was like going out to America, I wanted to make sure I was on a team where I was playing. I know a few girls who have kind of gone to a really good school and then struggled to make the team, and it can destroy your confidence. And I've seen that happen to guys as well. The men's team at Texas Tech was super strong, and a lot of guys went there and were really great players but couldn't make the team, and it does kind of gnaw away at your confidence. So I wanted to make sure I was playing, and they were a player short, so it was a certain that I was going to play my first year, which in the end I think kind of prepared me for pro golf. I was getting used to traveling nonstop and being away from home, and it's the experience that you don't have in Europe.
So how strong was the Texas Tech team on the women's side? I know that at the same time you were there, Ludwig was there from the men's side, and he's obviously gone on to do very, very good things. Who was on your squad then when you went over to Texas from the women's side?
So I had the player that actually was injured. The reason I joined, her name's Sofia Garcia. She's playing out on the LPGA now. She's from Paraguay. And then after I'd been there a couple of years, I had a French teammate called Gala Dumes. She won our conference, and she's playing for the French national team this week. We had Kiara Horder for a little bit. She won the British Amateur last year. Yeah, last year. But then she left. So Texas Tech didn't get much credit for that one. But we had so many internationals, which was also a great thing because we were all away from home. So we kind of bonded over that. And yeah, it was nice having someone like Sophia on the team, because in college she was such a dominant player, especially on our team. And just having someone to compare yourself against, who was winning tournaments like she was, it was great for my golf, and she made me want to improve and get better every day.
How did you find that move over to the States? You say it's obviously stood you in good stead as you now travel week in, week out in like 3 4 week blocks in the Ladies European Tour. But at that age in particular, so 16, 17, I imagine you're probably doing a certain amount of international travel with England golf, but probably nothing to the level of extent that was then thrust upon you.
Yeah, I think homesickness definitely played its part. I missed English food like so much. Everyone raves about the American food, but for me, there's a lot of like cream and stuff in it, so it sits quite heavy. So I did miss the food we have over here. But um, yeah, my amit to Korea, I really didn't travel that much. Yeah, in fact, I want to say like I didn't leave the UK before I went to college to play golf. Um, and I'm pretty certain, yeah, that's right. I didn't, yeah. So my coach at the time when I was growing up, he always said you had to earn the right to kind of play um, for national teams and stuff. And growing up, I wasn't picked for England golf teams, so that kind of limited my options for playing abroad. It was going to be at my own cost, and I wasn't in a position to do that. So um, once I went out to the States, I was traveling all over kind of there, and then I would come back and be in a position then to kind of play the European individual tournaments. And but yeah, it was just for me growing up, I'd just play the British and the Scottish and the English, and they were kind of, that was my season. So it was kind of crazy to go from having kind of April to September being a season to playing all year. That was probably the biggest adjustment for me, was kind of managing my time with that, because um yeah, I hadn't had a season that long before where you just don't stop.
Yeah, and I imagine in Texas it never really gets too cold there, does it? Even in the winter.
Yeah, so before I joined, it was like they hadn't had snow in like 20 years or something. And then every year I was there, it did snow. But it was only for a few days. And honestly, I think Texas is a great place to go for the weather. It's very mild. We hardly ever had rain, which was great. I mean, coming from the UK, all it seems to do is rain here. So to have hardly any rain, that was great. It's pretty windy, which I think helped my golf enormously. I feel like the wind teaches you to kind of shape your golf ball, keep it low, keep it high when you need to. So, in that sense, I think the weather kind of played its part in making me a better golfer. But there was a few days where it was a bit too cold. So,
So what's at what point then when you go over to Texas, or had you already kind of decided before you went over to the States and to college that professional golf was something that you wanted to chase?
I think professional golf was kind of always in the back of my mind. It wasn't something I necessarily had the confidence to believe I could do. Um, and then, I mean, like I said, it took me a couple of years to find my feet. So my results weren't great, kind of my freshman, sophomore year. Um, but I was just looking at the people I had around me, both on the men's and women's team. And I felt really motivated to get better. And I kind of did that. And the results eventually came with that. So, yeah, kind of my third year, I'd say, at Texas was when I really decided to push on and um, make the kind of jump that was needed to prepare myself for professional golf. I kind of dedicated every hour I had to making myself better, so that when the time came, I would be ready. And yeah, it was something I wanted to do, and I'm grateful that I'm actually able to kind of live out my dream.
You were saying there that you weren't sure at one point if you had the confidence necessary to chase pro golf. Did something change? Was there a moment or a tournament or a conversation that you had that you got that confidence to give it a go?
I think growing up, I felt like I had a lot of things kind of go against me in golf, just not being selected, stuff like that. And I was selected for something, so I can't say that everything went against me, but I felt like there were times when maybe I should have been selected and I wasn't. And I had a coach who really believed in me at the time. His name is David Ridley. He retired, so he doesn't coach me anymore, but he was a great swing coach for me. And I had my dad who kind of just picked me up whenever I was knocked back down. And I think without those two, I wouldn't have kind of built the self belief in myself that actually, yeah, I can do this. And I think for me, the goal of turning pro wasn't kind of the end of the goal. I've got goals I want to achieve. Winning on the LET was one of them, so that's great. But yeah, like I think it's easy to kind of turn pro and take your foot off the gas and think, okay, I've done it now. But actually, like, what do you want to achieve when you're pro? And I think kind of having those goals, talking those through with my team, is what kind of kept me motivated and still now keeps me motivated. Like it's great winning. And I mean, it's overwhelming the experience that's come with that, but I mean, I want to do it again. So it's like, can I make myself better and just keep pushing and keep knocking on the door and kind of let people know that it wasn't just a one-time thing.
So how is life on the Ladies European Tour? So your first season, you get quite good status first time out, which is rare enough, to be honest, for people going out on tour.
Yeah, I had a pretty solid first year. I felt like I made a lot of cuts. The way the kind of point system works on the LET is it's very top heavy. And I was just, finishing between 30th and 40th place every week. So I was making cuts, earning, like covering my costs, but I just couldn't really kick on to have a top 20, top 15, which is what I needed. I did get injured about halfway through the season, so that did take me out of a couple of events, and definitely slowed kind of any momentum I did have down. It also kind of made me nervous to come back. I had lots of people telling me lots of different things, so it was definitely a hard kind of situation to navigate on when to come back and when was the right time to compete. And when I did come back, I missed 2 cuts in a row, and I remember thinking, like, have I come back too soon? But the most important thing for me was I was then beginning to play pain free, so that was kind of like a green light for me. And I feel like when you're injured, especially as an athlete, it's very dramatic and you're wondering if you're ever going to play again, even if it's like a small thing. And you kind of forget what pain free feels like. So right now, touch wood, I'm pain free, so I'm enjoying golf this way.
Yeah, I think when it comes to athletes and injury, it's not just, oh, I've got a niggle on my back or my arm. It's existential. Like this, your body is very much your tool to you earning money. And yeah, in the same way, like tradespeople and stuff like that, like your body is your tool. You need it to work. Athletes are the exact same, and at a very high, like the stakes are very high when it comes to professional sport. What was the injury?
So it took a while to diagnose, but I had thoracic outlet syndrome in my left shoulder, which is basically inflammation of the muscle is causing the nerves on top to push up and get trapped in the collarbone, which was causing like numbness down my left arm. So whenever it flared up, I just couldn't really feel my left hand, which wasn't ideal for trying to control the club face. There were times where I was like, I've got no clue where this golf ball is going. But yeah, it just involved like a lot of sharp pain. And it's quite a difficult thing to diagnose. So it took a while, but the Ladies European Tour really supported me with that and put me in touch with some of the best doctors. And eventually, when we got onto kind of the rehab process, I managed to get a good team around me. And yeah, I had to make decisions that some people didn't agree with, and in the end it works out for me, and it's not something that just kind of goes away, so I'm still managing it. I just have to make sure I'm keeping on top of my strength work on kind of my shoulders, and stretching and doing all of the good stuff that keeps you mobile. Stuff that I definitely didn't do before. I thought, oh, I'm young, I can just go to the range, but not anymore. So doing the stretching is really important. And if there's any young golfers listening, I definitely would tell them to stretch as soon as possible, because that's what my dad told me and I didn't listen. So definitely stretch.
So that sounds A, quite serious, and B, like the journey back to playing pain free takes quite a while. So surely you would have been eligible for some kind of medical exemption there from the LET.
Yeah, so the medical exemption is quite complicated, but you basically have to miss 5 events in a row. I actually, the time I was injured kind of was spread out over the major season. So I wouldn't have necessarily got into those events. So they only count the events you would have got into. So I think I ended up missing 3 events I would have got into, but I was kind of out for 2 months. And I was kind of lucky enough to get an invite last year to the Aramco at Centurion. And if I was to take a medical, I would have to miss that event. And at the time, that was kind of the biggest event on my schedule. So my goal was to come back and play for that. And I knew that maybe that would have like repercussions. But I thought if I can get fit enough, I would still have enough tournaments left to keep my card. And I felt at the time that was the right decision. And yeah, I honestly don't really regret it. I see a lot of players take medicals, but then I think it's difficult to come back from that, and it doesn't necessarily guarantee you kind of a full season. It just gives you kind of the events you missed. So there were talks of it, but I thought if I can get pain free without taking a medical, I can still keep my card. It turns out I didn't, but that was more bad golf than it was injury.
So what was the road to recovery then with the injury? Was there was no kind of operations, or was it all just kind of physiotherapy rehab?
It was all kind of physiotherapy rehab. I looked at getting a steroid injection, but it has to be approved for drugs testing and stuff. So it would have taken probably longer than I would have liked. And I wanted to kind of stay away from as much kind of intervention in it as possible. My boyfriend, he plays golf, and he got a wrist injury, and he had multiple injections and 2 surgeries, and he is now back playing pain free, but it took him about 18 months. And his advice was kind of do as much as you can without injections or surgery, and then if like it's a last resort. So I took that advice as someone who's gone through, even though it was a different injury, a similar kind of thought process to what I was in. And I took his advice on board. And I'm glad in the end that I did it through rehab, because I think surgery always kind of leaves a weakness there. But yeah, it's something I'm still managing, but at the moment it's in a really good place. So I'm really grateful to my team for that.
Yeah, I also find that when athletes get surgery as well, there's always there's a fear element that comes with it. I mean, you can be completely healed, but you're always kind of overcompensating and trying to protect that surgery. So I'm sure you're also pretty glad you didn't have that. You mentioned there a little earlier on that like lots of people in your team were kind of saying lots of things, and there was almost like too much communication going on. How did you handle that, or like how do you manage that? Is probably a better question.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. And the more people you invite into kind of your inner circle, the more opinions you're going to get. And they may not necessarily be the opinions you want to hear. I think quite early on, the doctor was very much like, your pain will dictate whether you're going to play or not. And I kind of ran with that. But I know at the time, my physiotherapist was like, leaning towards more taking a medical. My dad was more leaning towards get back playing as soon as possible. So I kind of struck a balance in the middle. And yeah, I think in the end, for it being my first injury, I managed it the best way I could have managed it. And I am really grateful for the European Tour for putting me in touch with some really great people who have been in the position with athletes before, because I think you can easily get a doctor who doesn't work with athletes, and they're very much focused on fixing the problem and not focusing on when you're going to be back playing, like your career side of things. So I'm grateful that I had doctors and physiotherapists who had worked with athletes, and I think that really helped kind of my road to recovery go a lot smoother.
That's interesting you say that, because I imagine like competitive sport and competitive golf is tough at that highest level, and like the caliber of golf is very, very high. Can you just give, I guess, people that wouldn't follow the ladies European Tour quite as closely as I guess you or I would, how high is the caliber of golf on ladies European Tour? Because the margins between that and LET access are very slim.
Yeah, I mean, the ladies European Tour is getting better and better every year. The standard of players is just improving, and you can see that in the players who are keeping their cards, and the scores the winners are shooting. There are a lot of good players last year who lost their card, and a lot of people were surprised by that. And I think it's only going to continue to grow. The money's improving, the coverage is improving. We're beginning to get more players coming out of college, staying in Europe rather than going to the States. And I think there's some really strong players who are at the high level of amateur golf right now who are considering turning pro, and the European Tour's on their minds. And I think that can only bring kind of more eyes onto us and improve the tour. And yeah, it's grown crazy amounts, and kind of even the last 5 years, the standard of women's golf is getting better and better, and I just hope that the coverage kind of follows that.
Surely an event like last week's Aramco series event in Centurion, that's a pretty good example of it, of how it is growing. Because I guess, was it one of the first events where non-major events that had on-course coverage from Sky Sports as well?
Yeah, I mean, Aramco and Golf Saudi have really boosted that, and just the way the tournaments run is amazing. And yeah, it's good to see kind of those on course commentary coming to life in non-major events, because the LPGA have that week in, week out, and yeah, I think we should have it too.
Did pursuing LPGA ever come across your mind? Obviously, you're in college in the States. I'm sure, like, obviously you're talking to you're talking to teammates who now do play on the LPGA tour. I'm sure that was something that caught your eye at some point, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think being out in college in the States, I think you're pushed to play Epson Tour and LPGA, Epson being the tour below the LPGA. And I think coming out of college or in my final year, that's really what I wanted to do. And I spoke to a few players, and you know, it's really expensive to play in America. And at the end of the day, that is what it came down to. For me starting out, I didn't have the money to play in America, so coming to Europe, I wanted to play here first, and then when I feel ready, my goal is to still go out and play LPGA, but I don't want to play and just be missing cuts. I want to be playing and competing there. So I think Europe provides like a great opportunity to really test your game against some really great players and kind of prepare you for that. It acts as kind of a better stepping stone than kind of jumping straight in the deep end from college golf to LPGA. So yeah, it really came down to money. But I'm so grateful that I chose to play in Europe, because I've got a lovely group of girls who I travel with now, and everyone's really supportive. And it's a great tour to be on. We have loads of really nice events, go to some really cool places. So yeah, I'm happy that I made the decision to come to Europe.
You spoke a little bit earlier on about how you had a conversation with your team, got back to playing, and then unfortunately lost your card. So then for this year, you were started off with LET access rankings essentially. So you were playing on the LET access series. How much status did you have on the LET? Because you still had a good few starts this season.
Yeah, so I knew coming into the start of the year that I would have 2 starts in Australia. I got those end of last year by going out and playing on some of the WPGA events down there, which is the tour that Australia have. So that kind of put me in a position where I knew I had 2 events at least on the LET. So I thought that would help me at Q School take the pressure off. It didn't. I still let the pressure get to me. Q School is like a pressure cooker. Any tournament, it's like just the craziest thing we have in golf. 1 week dictates kind of the rest of your season, and some people handle that well, and I didn't last year. So yeah, I then made the decision to kind of chase some starts. I went down to South Africa. I played 3 events down there. I knew I had to win to get an LET start down there, and I didn't. And then one of my
You came
events
close though. At one point, didn't you?
yeah, yeah.
Like finished like 4th or something. You were
Yeah,
very
I finished
close.
4th. Yeah, I did finish 4th. Yeah, it was tough. Like I knew I had to win, and winning's hard. So it was a long shot, but I don't regret doing it. And then I went to Australia, played my 2 events there, and one of the events got cancelled. So then there was no order of merit points, which I was kind of relying on for the re-rank. So I only got 1 lot of order of merit points. So then I was kind of in the position where I was like, do I commit to access or do I go back to South Africa? So I made the decision to go back down to South Africa, and I played a Monday qualifier and qualified for the South African Ladies Open after being on site the week before in Joe Berger's first reserve and not getting in. So I just sat there all day waiting for someone to drop out, and no one did. So that was tough. Going down there is what got me into Italy. So even though it was a hard experience, and I did 7 weeks on the road, kind of going South Africa, Australia, France, South Africa, when my body didn't know where it was. Yeah, it was worth it because it got me the position to get a few more starts. And I think not many people would have chosen to do that route. And even my boyfriend was like, "You're crazy! Like you're traveling way too much." And I was like, "It's okay. Like I'm okay. Like as long as my body's okay, I can do this." So yeah, but in the end it worked out. So I'm grateful for that.
Did it literally come down to the last 2 events or so that got you the points then to get into the Italian Open?
Yeah, so for my first event, I think I got something like 10 points or something. I didn't get many. I made the cut and was going along nicely, and then had a bad kind of final 9 holes. Just again, the pressure, knowing I needed to perform to kind of change my year from access to LET. But I learned a lot from it, and I went into the next week feeling super confident. I shot 2 under in the first round, and then was nicely placed. I think I was like 20th or something with that. And then the rain came and flooded the course, and they cancelled it. And I was like, okay, this is great. So what do I do now? So that wasn't kind of my plan, but then I went to South Africa Monday qualified, and that got me an extra kind of 20 points or something that enabled me to re-rank higher than I would have done, which got me into the Italian Open it got me into Czech and it got me into the Swiss Open. And I was kind of focusing on Italy and Swiss as my two for the year that I was really going to target, because of where they fell in the schedule. They had slightly weaker fields. So for me, those were like the two events where I was like, right, I can take advantage here. I was hoping to kind of post the top 10 in one of them and get enough points to kind of keep playing. And it kind of worked out even better than that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely did take advantage. You chose your events very, very well. Fair play. How vindicating is it then when you are in the position to win an LET event, and then you make that putt, the bit of a knee knocker on 18, to be honest with you, to win the event. Is it relief? Is it excitement, or just like are you exhausted from the travel at that point?
Yeah, it was a lot of relief. Um, I mean, my caddy kind of told me I had two putts for it after I'd hit my first putt. Um, so I was just trying to kind of cozy it down next to the hole, and it went 2 feet too far. So, but again, he kind of came up to me and was like, "Are you good? Like, are you feeling okay?" And I was like, "You know what? Like, yeah." I knew that I'd been holding them all week, and I just kind of tried to take the situation out of it, because at the end of the day, it was a straight uphill putt. If that was just on the putting green before I'm about to tee off, there's no way it's not missing. So I kind of just tricked my mind in a way. And even when it was done, I just couldn't really believe it. And I always get worried that like the scoring's wrong, so I just didn't want to celebrate too much. People were pouring water over me, and I was like, "Have I definitely won? Like, is this is this for sure?" But no, it was a lot of relief. And yeah, it was a really great feeling to kind of cross the line and know that I can compete. I feel like it got in my own way a lot of times in the past. So um, it really felt good to win and change my season.
Talk about fine margins as well. You're what 10, 20 points away from knowing you're going back to playing LET access and delaying a lot of things in your professional career to a week later. You're a winner on the LET. You've got what 3-year exemption on tour, and you're into the AIG Women's Open in St Andrews. I mean, small
Yeah, it getting into the British Open at St Andrews. I mean, that was one of my goals for the year. When as soon as I knew it was there, I was like, this has to happen. Um, and after 9 holes, it did kind of creep into my mind in that final round. I was like, okay, Scottish Open, Irish Open, British Open. I was like, okay, but I just tried to kind of keep it out of my mind, and I still had 9 holes of golf left, and Maria Hernandez chipped in on 18 for eagle, and in the end, the margin was a lot closer than I thought it would be. I felt like I was playing well, so I thought I had kind of like a 3 or 4 shot lead, but it was closer than that. So, but yeah, it's crazy how much it's changed kind of the next few years for me. A lot of my team during my injury were like, "You need to plan your rest. You need to plan this," and I'm like, "Okay, that's great, but I can't plan anything. I'm getting into events last minute. I'm relying on invites." Um, and even like seeing my boyfriend, I mean, he's playing golf in Canada right now, so um, we're not seeing each other much. So at least now I have my set schedule, and I can now plan in my rest, like everyone was telling me to. And yeah, it's just so nice to be able to kind of play in the events I want to play in, rather than, oh, I have to play in everything. Because it just makes golf so much more enjoyable when the kind of pressure's off you a little bit.
So what do you do to celebrate?
You know what? Everyone's asked me this. I really didn't do anything. I just kind of
That's
came home.
disappointing.
I know everyone was like, "Did you have a party?" Like, I just came home and spent it with my family. I took the week off afterwards, withdrew from a tournament, which I'm glad I did. My body needed the rest. But yeah, it was nice just to spend it with my family. I did go and watch Taylor Swift with my sister. I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan, so that was kind of my celebration. I had tickets to go and see her when the Scottish Open was on. So then I got into the Scottish Open. I was like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to go. But one of my sister's friends had tickets for like that weekend. So we just swapped and I was able to go, and that was my celebration.
That's a good friend. Swapping tickets
Yeah.
for what, like, Scottish Opens are still a few weeks away. That's a good friend putting off going to Taylor Swift for that long.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she did say she didn't have her outfit ready, so maybe I helped her out a little bit. It was like a mutual beneficial kind of agreement
Sure,
there.
yeah, sure. So will this be your first major now, the Women's British Open?
Yeah, it's my first major at St Andrews, so like there's obviously whenever you play your first major, you're not going to forget it, but to have it be at the home of golf is just super special, and like I'm so excited.
Have you played St Andrews before?
Never played it.
Okay, very good. So that's a whole new experience for a bunch of reasons for you. That's very exciting.
Yeah, no, I actually went for the first time last summer. I'm like the only golfer who like hasn't been to St Andrews, so I was like, I need to change this. So I just went and walked around and um walked a few holes, and I actually didn't think it would kind of make me feel anything, but it did. So it is a really special place. But yeah, I'm so excited. And I think I'll have some family come, which will be nice because they don't get to see me play that often. So yeah, it'll be a really good couple of weeks.
You were on the Ladies European Tour podcast, and you were asked what are some of the kind of the bigger events that you're looking forward to specifically this year. You also name checked the British Open, the Scottish Open, but also the Irish Open, which I know you played in last year in down in Drummond Castle. Finished what, tied for 40th or so.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, when I went to the course, I actually thought it was playing really difficult, and I finished under par that week, and I was tied 40th, and I was so impressed with the standard of golf that everyone played that week. It's definitely not an easy golf course, and they set it up challenging, and the girls just ripped it up. So um, I remember walking away thinking, like, how have I finished 40th? I was like 300 total or something like that. I was like, how? But it was a really great week, and aside from the kind of Aramco events where there's obviously a lot more money pumped into it, I think the Irish Open is the best event on our schedule. The crowds that you get is just unbelievable. They definitely favour the Irish players, but we can let them off for that. But no, it was a great week, and I loved it. And I'm super excited to play it again this year.
So when you say it's one of the best events, obviously aside from the Aramco series and the majors, what is it that goes into, like, from a player's perspective, from your side, what makes a good event?
It's just really well run. There's crowd control, which is needed, especially when you have Leonie Maguire there, like we did last year. Um, a fun environment. They encourage people to come out. They encourage a lot of juniors to come out. And I love playing in front of young golfers. I think it's great because I've been there, aspiring to be someone playing in an event like that. So it's cool to be the player that I once aspired to be. And um, yeah, I mean, everyone is just seems so happy to be there, and they're so grateful that you're there and playing in their country. And I just loved the support, and I felt really like wanted as a player. So I think that's what makes it just such a great event. Oh, I've got goosebumps just like thinking back to last year. But no, it was just amazing to see that many people out watching women's golf, because aside from the majors, it doesn't really happen, especially in Europe. So yeah, to get the crowds that they do at the Irish is it's really impressive.
For people that wouldn't go to a lot of tour events, um, how big are the crowds in the Irish compared to your standard tour event? Because it seems like I mean, I know from my side, the Irish do like to turn up for their own in particular, but for any kind of sporting event that's on in Ireland, people like to turn up.
Yeah, I mean, like when I won in Italy, there was, I mean, maybe a couple hundred people round 18 green, but kind of walking with me, I would say there was no more than like 10. And I was in the final group. So, I mean, it made it easier for me. There was less people watching. So, but the Irish, I mean, they get huge crowds. They put grandstands up, which always makes the event feel better. At the end of the day, like we are professional golfers, like we want to be playing in front of people. And I
You also
think,
want to be treated as such, though, at the same time as well.
yeah, exactly. And I think honestly, having so many people come out and watch it does make you feel like, oh, golf is my job. And that's what separates it from like amateur golf to professional golf. Um, and just there were so many kids there last year. And that just really stood out to me. And I love it when kids come to watch, because I feel like golf isn't necessarily the sport that you choose for your child. Like it's not something they play in school. It's kind of a bit different. But it was so nice to see so many girls and boys out there last year, and hopefully they're expecting even bigger crowds this year, I know. So I'm hopeful for everyone being out there.
Where did you hang around for the playoff last year?
I didn't. I had a flight to catch, but we were watching it kind of on our phones in the airport. There was a bunch of us. It was crazy.
It literally was crazy. And Van Damme's driver snapping off the lining, off the rope liner. How would you have handled that? That's an outrageous thing to have to even try and comprehend.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because her driver was broken in travel to that event. So she'd got a driver sent, and it only arrived like just in time for round one. So that was already a brand new driver. And then it snapped in the playoff too. I mean, at that point, I would just be thinking, this just isn't my week. But no, I think she handled it well. And I mean, she's long enough to not need a driver.
I was about to
She
say,
was
yeah.
still, yeah, she was still able to get there in two. So, um, I think if it was to happen to anyone, she was the right player, if possible, just because she's so long. So, but yeah, it's definitely one where you have to kind of take time and try and not let it affect you. But it's hard when something like that, kind of completely out of your control, completely like unpredicted, happens.
Did anything unpredictable happen for you in the final round or during the Italian Open? No snap clubs, I know that, but anything
Yeah,
else kind of arise?
you know, I don't think so. Really, I had a putt on 13. It was up to a two-tier green, and I thought I hit it hard enough, and it came back down to my feet, possibly even further away than it was when I started. So that was unpredicted. I definitely didn't think it was going to happen. I definitely had to kind of recompose myself, because I was like, how have I just done that? But I managed to get out of there with a bogey, and the next hole I birdied, and I actually think that kind of really changed my momentum. I was playing with Pia Babnik, and she was battling hard, kind of coming at me as much as she could. And we were kind of in the same position on the next hole, and I went first and chipped it close and kind of put the pressure on her. So I think that really kind of changed my momentum. I felt like it at that point it was kind of a match play situation. Even though there was other people who were also going low, that kind of gave me the okay, like I am still in control, even though I had this three putt that I didn't expect, and it wasn't like going to the plan, so to say. But that definitely kind of made me okay, like I am still in control of this.
So we're at the moment 5 weeks away from the KPMG Women's Irish Open. How much research do you put into your courses before you get there? So obviously the tournament's in a different venue this year. So it's in Carton House on the O'Mara course. It's closer to Dublin Airport. probably a little bit less logistics and travel from your side. But do you look at the golf course at all beforehand, or is it a case of you arrive on the Sunday and you or the Monday and use your time on site to just get prepped?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I try and do as much as I can before, especially if it's a course I haven't seen. Um, I've heard great things about Carton House, so I'm very excited. When I'm traveling there, hopefully Sunday evening after the British Open, I will look it up online, kind of. But I don't like to do too much if I've got events prior because I want my full focus to be on them. And then the
Especially
rest of it will
especially
just
when you're
be,
in St Andrews the week
yeah,
beforehand.
exactly. But no, most of it will be when I turn up on site. I mean, I'll do a bit of research, just kind of eyeball kind of what the holes are going to look like. So when I get there, I'm not like, oh gosh, this is all new to me. Um, and I'm pretty thorough with kind of the way I do things. I've recently discovered I prefer to kind of play 9 holes and 9 holes if I can. Just kind of splits up my day, allows me to do a bit more extra practice. I can get a better feel for the greens that way. I hadn't seen the Italian course before. Um, and I'm just quite, I take a lot of notes. I take a lot of notes. My course book is a mess. But I think if I do 9 holes and 9 holes, I can concentrate better. Whereas if I do like 18, my my back nine just isn't great in terms of I miss more things and I don't hit as many shots from the places that maybe I should. And I feel like the back nine is kind of the most important part of your round almost because that's where you're kind of finishing off. And if you're going well, you want to have a strong finish. And if you're not playing great, well, you need a strong finish as well. So, if I can, I'll be hoping to play 9 and 9 just so I can get better notes and um, yeah, I'll be asking a few people and seeing what they know and seeing if I can get some local knowledge of someone.
Yeah, exactly. So notes, talk me through that. What kind of detailed notes are we looking at?
So I like to just keep a lot of kind of my shot data. So during my practice rounds, I'll be working out like kind of how far my ball is flying, how far it's rolling on the greens, where it's pitching, how the green's reacting. Then I'll go on to kind of where I think the pins are going to be. Where's a good miss? Where's obviously you shouldn't miss if you can. Doesn't mean that you don't go there, but at least you know that you're not meant to. So you don't start aiming at a pin that's tucked left when you know that left is bad. Um, just stuff like that. A lot of it is around the greens. That's where I make my notes. Just off the tee, it's just kind of a line and a landing number. That's all I really need. Um, but then around the greens is kind of everything. Is there a thicker patch of grass that you really want to avoid because your ball's going to get sat down in? I remember at the Irish Open last year, there I think hole like 15 was like a drivable par four. People were hitting like 3 wood. They didn't even need driver. I chose to lay up every day just because for me, the grass around the green was super thick and I felt like your golf ball could really like get buried. And I thought it was harder to make birdie from there than the fairway. So I was just hitting 5 iron down the left and I was under par for that hole. So I felt like for me, that's what worked. But it wasn't necessarily the right strategy or the wrong strategy. But for me, that's where I felt I could make birdie better from. And I think that's what I try and kind of do is work out what's going to suit me the best. And um, yeah, it's interesting to play with other players and see how they play the hole because a lot of the times you can make birdie different ways, and it's just how your golf game is like suited. For me, it's kind of anywhere between like 50 to 80 yards. If I've got a wedge in my hand in there, I feel like I'm going to make birdie. So try and leave myself as many of those as I can.
What's the camaraderie like on tour? I mean, even from the English perspective, there's a good cohort of you now there on tour. Do you guys all travel together, stay together?
Yeah, I mean, I've really kind of got a nice group of friends now. I travel with a few English girls, but honestly, I'm super I travel with anyone. I've traveled with some Italians, the Australians, like I'll go with anyone. But yeah, it's a really nice group of girls, and it really made me happy to see like girls who are actually genuinely happy for me when I won. I feel like golf's a really individual sport, and you know, in sport you can get a lot of jealousy. Like no one can deny that, like especially in such an individual sport like golf. So to have so many girls genuinely happy that I'd won was just so nice, and they've kind of given me memories that like I'll never forget. So I'm grateful to the friends I've made, and it makes traveling and being away from home so much easier. Yeah.
I can imagine. Last one then from my side is probably the most important one. Where's the trophy?
The trophy is on the windowsill in my dad's house. So yeah, there was my access trophy is kind of on like a chest of drawers in our lounge, because it like matches the color of the oak, because it's like a statue, but this one's a silver cup, so he gets to kind of place it. It's his house, so he can place it. So it's on the windowsill, so if anyone wants to break in and steal it, they can.
Jeez, don't say that. Don't say that. Listen, thank you very much for having a chat with me. Good luck over the next few weeks. You're heading off, what, Sunday is it, for Czech?
Monday, yeah.
Monday for Czech.
Yeah.
Listen, best of luck over there. Good luck. Enjoy St Andrews. It'll be an amazing experience. And then no doubt we'll see you in Carton House as well.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.
On the tee, Jack Nicklaus.
This is the minute the millions around the world have waited for.
We will allow you to enjoy all of this. They are dancing in the pubs of Dublin. Harrington with an ace.
And we have a shining star at sunset. Rory continues his run to greatness.
The return to glory.